is Paul Rowley,
And I'm Sara Welch.
and welcome to Farm and Dairy's virtual newsletter, where we'll be giving you a rundown of all the news this week. And actually, just want to briefly welcome our managing editor, Sara Welch. Thank you for joining us this week
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
for this rendition of our rundown. We actually have a very serious story, though, to start off with that was reported on by our friends from the Associated Press. In Clairton, Pennsylvania, just after 10:50 a.m. this past Monday morning, an explosion ripped through the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works plant, which was a very big deal. By this time of recording on Wednesday afternoon, we know that 2 workers now have been killed. At least 10 were rushed to area hospitals, and this sprawling facility where this took place was actually pretty heavily damaged in this explosion. It's the largest coking operation in North America.
Oh, wow.
So my question was, what is coking? Because I had no idea what that was.
Sure.
So the article explains a little bit. The plant converts coal to coke, which is a key component in the steelmaking process.
Okay.
To make coke, coal is baked in these like special ovens at very high temperatures for a very long time to remove impurities that could otherwise weaken steel when it was like used to be built and stuff. The process creates what's known as coke gas, which is made up of this kind of lethal combination of methane, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide. And so that's like a lot of what these guys were unfortunately exposed to as part of this explosion. On the scene, emergency crews described multiple smaller blasts occurring after the initial one, which shook nearby buildings and rattled residents. One worker was actually pulled alive still from the wreckage hours later, which I can't even imagine him being in there for so long. Allegheny County officials urged people to stay clear while responders worked to stabilize the area and the facility itself. This plant has been a cornerstone of Clairton's economy for some time, but also it's been a source of major controversy as well. It's faced repeated safety violations, deadly accidents have occurred there, and also costly pollution lawsuits over the years have happened because of the plant. In 2019, U.S. Steel paid about $9 million to settle an air quality case stemming from the operation of the plant. More recently, they agreed to about $20 million in upgrades, actually, in equipment, after a federal lawsuit found that a fire a couple of years ago had damaged pollution controls there. Officials say that early air quality tests after Monday's explosion don't indicate that like the residents that live around there are going to be exposed to like dangerous levels of sulfur dioxide and other things that are really harmful, but they're still wary. Residents have lived through the plant's past fires and environmental incidents, and they're like, we literally cannot take any more of this. U.S. Steel, which is now owned by Japan-based Nippon Steel after that big merger that was in the news recently, has pledged a full investigation into the cause behind the explosion. But these environmental groups are also chiming in and saying, whoa, we actually would like an independent review to explain what happened and find the cause. And also, maybe it's time to have a conversation about the future of the plant and whether it should have a future at all.
Sure.
So that story is in the paper this week. It's a pretty big one. But I think also we're going to be talking about recreational pot in Ohio as well. I think.
Sure. Yeah. So Liz provided an update on that this week.
Yeah.
The recreational sales of marijuana in Ohio last year brought in $702 million.
Oh my.
That adds to the nearly $3 billion in total cannabis revenue since medical sales began in 2019.
Nice.
Right now, the state collects a 10% excise tax on recreational purchases and a 5.75% sales tax on both medical and recreational products.
Okay.
This money is used to fund programs like social equity initiatives, community benefits, addiction services, and it even funds, the state's regulatory body.
Oh, right.
All of this was set up by voter-approved Issue 2 in 2023. However, the future of that funding is actually up in the air. In March, House Bill 160 and Governor Mike DeWine's 2026-27 budget proposed redirecting most of the revenue to the general fund for law enforcement and jail construction.
Okay.
DeWine also tried to raise marijuana taxes. However, that idea was struck down over concerns it could push people away from Ohio's legal market.
Right.
On top of that, House Bill 160 and Senate Bill 56 could create new criminal penalties for consumers, which has sparked pushback from legalization supporters who say it really goes against what the voters wanted.
Yeah.
Liz's story really digs into the history of Ohio's cannabis market, the current legislative uncertainty, And, it leaves you asking really, what might be coming next. To get the full context and check out her whole full story, you can find it in this week's newspaper, or you can go to farmanddairy.com.
Yeah, solid. Very important story too. So that's cool. All right. Well, I have a story this week on the cover of our auction section. I went and traveled all the way to
Scio, I believe.
Scio, Ohio. I love that name. To the Perry Township Volunteer Fire Department as they turned their driveway outside into the scene of a life or death farm rescue. Not in response to a real emergency, but to train for the occurrence of one. So Dan Keenan, he is the director of the National Education Center for Agricultural Safety. And he led the charge here, and he stood in front of the firefighters and farmers who were in attendance, and he laid the scenario out plainly. He said, "We've got two victims, a farmer and their young son, and they're trapped in a confined space that is gradually filling with dangerous levels of gas." So then it was down to business. So firefighters, there was a classroom component, and then firefighters got suited up and they went into the simulator, which is basically a large metal trailer with some windows to look in to see kind of what they're doing inside, with mannequins that they responded to, which were standing in for our victims. They eventually were able to extract both of the victims, and then we reflected as a group on what what went well, what needed improvement, what were things that they needed to watch out for while the scenario was happening. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, farming is one of America's most dangerous jobs. Since 2012, more than 1,500 agricultural workers have actually died on the job. And in confined space rescues, Keenan said that about 60% of the people who die are actually would-be rescuers themselves. So
Oh, wow.
people who would go in because they're trying to save a loved one or something, and they actually weren't able to make it out in that case. Keenan talked about different gases that are really dangerous, such as hydrogen sulfide, which has this really insidious property where you can smell it and then it kind of dissipates,
Okay.
and you no longer can smell it. And a lot of people will think that they're safe at that point, they've cleared it and now they're just breathing oxygen, but they're not. They're being slowly suffocated by this gas. Perry Township Fire Chief Eric Horn told me that the lesson from this exercise is really universal. Whether it's a manure pit or another confined space, you want to stay aware, you want to protect yourself, and you don't want to become another victim.
Yeah.
And trainings like this for the firefighters that work under his stead can just really mean the difference between life or death for people.
Yeah, sure.
So that was a big one. But I think also we're going to talk about Medicaid.
Yeah, Liz was a busy girl last week.
Yeah.
She also covered the impact of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which was signed into law on July 4th.
Right.
And how it could put hundreds of thousands of people in Pennsylvania and Ohio at risk of losing Medicaid coverage.
Right.
The bill cuts $1 trillion in federal Medicaid spending over the next decade. It also adds work and community engagement requirements for certain recipients.
Right.
And changes the ACA marketplace enrollment rules, which is that would be your Obamacare enrollees.
Gotcha.
Advocates warn that these changes could put vulnerable groups, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities, in serious jeopardy.
Yeah.
They wouldn't otherwise be able to support these services that they currently have through Medicaid.
Right.
And also rural hospitals in both states are especially at risk since many rely heavily on Medicaid funding.
Yeah.
The bill does set up a $50 billion rural health transformation plan. However, experts say that, that may not be enough to really bridge the gap for those cuts.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, dozens of hospitals could face closures, including maternity wards and home care services. This would create, healthcare deserts and strain families who depend on these services.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people are really scared right now. Critics, including healthcare workers and affected families, argue that the cuts threaten patient care and workforce stability. Many home care workers rely on Medicaid themselves.
Yeah.
So obviously if their medical coverage was cut, that would really affect or make it harder for them to provide safe care for other people too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Supporters say the bill reduces fraud and encourages work participation. But opponents warned that, actually it could do the opposite and make care less accessible and stress, already fragile rural healthcare systems.
Wow.
You can read Liz's full story. There's obviously a lot of data in there that we did not even touch on.
Yeah.
And on the cover of this week's paper with these great graphics that David did.
Yeah,
and
David's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and also at farmanddairy.com.
Yeah, solid. Yeah. No, we have a beautiful front page this week. Thank you, David. Also, in our rural section, Matthew Chasney this week takes us to the Northton Raceway Park in Summit County, Ohio, for the next installment of the beloved racing report, which everybody loves. And he introduces us this week to the Mazzagatti family. So here's where the article starts. We're basically like right there, like in the driver's seat next to 13-year-old Chloe, who is in the team hauler. And she's convinced that something is wrong with her car. The crew says that there's like a setup issue happening, and she's been driving, and she's like, no, something is seriously wrong. I know what I'm talking about. I do this for a living. She's not just any teenager behind the wheel of a car. She last year racked up about 15 wins in the Legends class.
Wow.
Which sounds really, really cool. And in her rookie late model season, she has already got 1 win and 9 top 5s. So like this girl knows how to drive. She learned speed from her dad, Mike. Patience from her mother, and she knows every bump and corner on the track, and that's partially because she grew up there. Mike used to own the track over there.
Okay.
Meanwhile, her 10-year-old brother Michael is having like a banner of a night. He is also a racer because, of course, he received like first place in the Bandolero Heat race and then the feature race as well, adding to his growing trophy shelf that he has at home. I got one of those, like, congratulations for playing on like a pipsqueak soccer team trophies when I was his age. So he has quite beaten me like out of the water already. But the Mazzagatti family, their time here and their name runs really deep at the racetrack.
Okay.
They, Mike's father actually, and his uncle and his stepdad, I think as well, have all raced here. And then obviously Mike himself is a premier racer. He's been doing it since 1997. He's been like riding that track. And now sometimes he is even like neck and neck with his kids out there.
That's really cool.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Turns out Chloe was actually right about something being wrong in her car. The issue was like a broken something with the rear end. I kind of forget from the article. But she adapted. She made a late race pass, and then she finished in what place? Well, I'm not going to tell you, dear reader, because it is your job to pick up where I'm leaving you off and to read the article in the rural section of the paper. So anyway, cliffhanger alert. But
wow, thanks, Paul.
You're so welcome.
So to not leave you guys on a cliffhanger, we also had our outdoors columnist on the cover of our rural marketplace section this week. Jim Abrams wrote about bats.
Love Jim. Yeah.
So Jim basically says that, although bats are often misunderstood, feared, and unfairly associated with vampire lore, they play a critical ecological role.
Yeah.
In Ohio, we have 13 bat species.
Oh, yeah.
However, unfortunately, several are classified as threatened or endangered.
Right.
So that's,
Okay.
Not good news for the bats.
No.
All bats in the state are protected by law, but, they still face a number of challenges, including threats from humans, habitat loss, disease, especially white nose syndrome.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah.
And, they've been impacted by wind energy moving into the state more too.
Okay.
So, the widespread population declines in Ohio have really led to increased bat monitoring through programs sponsored by like the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Division of Wildlife. And it's also put an extra focus on conservation efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Jim asked readers to consider, how they can help by installing a bat box or supporting organizations like the Bat Conservation International and Ohio State's Bat Working Group.
Oh, cool.
If you're interested in helping bats recover in Ohio, you can read more in Jim's story about the organizations that are doing this work and also get more tips about how you can make your backyard more bat friendly.
Yeah, that sounds so cool. I love the bats, honestly. I kind of wish I was a bat. Well, I think that is our top stories for the week. To read more, or to read the full stories rather, visit, the drill, farmanddairy.com, or find your local newsstand. Sarah, do you want to address the audience or our listeners? Any
Yeah, we have lots of good stuff in the paper this week, and I hope you guys check it out.
Yeah, solid. Well, thanks, you guys. I guess we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.